Well, welcome back to the Cory Lee Show, guys. Today is going to be an awesome episode. This is going to be, I really hope you got your pens and your notebooks out because this one's going to be a good one. I got two new friends here with me. I got Adele Gambardella and Chip Massey. And I just want to read you guys some of their bio here because I think this is really cool. So Adele, she has spearheaded major crisis PR campaigns for some big time brands like SAP, Verizon, Johnson and Johnson. She's been invited to speak to the UN twice and possibly to the American Physical. Well, I know she has the American Physical Therapy Association, which I was probably at when she spoke, which is kind of cool. And Chip is an ex-FBI hostage negotiator and special agent for 22 years. He investigated the 9/11 terrorist attack and led the New York FBI office's crisis negotiations team in all 5 boroughs, and just super excited to have you guys on, excited about our conversation. And so Adele and Chip, welcome to the Cory Lee Show.
Thank you, Cory.
Yeah, well, all right. So I kind of asked you guys before we got to recording, but I'm just reading your bios and I'm looking at some of your history and how did you guys come together? Tell us a little bit about your journey and then what you guys are doing right now, because you got some awesome things that you're doing as well.
Yeah, thank you. After I came out of the FBI, I was trying to figure out, how I knew I wanted to go into business, and I knew I wanted to apply the skill sets of what I had. And so I was working on my own with that, and I went to an entrepreneurial dinner, and Adele happened to be there. And so it's one of those things where you go around the table, you introduce yourself, and I heard what Adele did as a crisis communications person. She'd also had her own practice for 16 years, and she had all these employees work under her. She started out as a journalist. She worked for USA Today, and she also was on at George Magazine. I don't know if some of your listeners are going to be too young to remember that, but that was John F. Kennedy's Jr. Magazine. And she has some great stories about meeting him, by the way. You have to ask her. And so after we met and started talking, Adele started asking me questions about, okay, what did I do? How did I do it as a negotiator, as an agent, as an investigator? And she really got down to brass tacks on it, to the point where she saw very clearly how it became a business model. And that was like in August, Cory. And she says, you know what? We're going to put on a masterclass. I said, okay, sure. And she goes, we're going to put it on in about 3 months. I said, hold up.
I like it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Cory, you get it. You do. Me, I was fighting crime for 22 years. I didn't understand how all this worked. And she's going light speed. I'm like, hold on. She goes, nope, we're going. So boom, there it was. 3 months later, we had a masterclass in New York City, sold out. We even had to add chairs because the demand was so high for it. We did it again in DC. But anyway, that's how we got together. Yeah.
And I always have to say, Cory, Chip plays down his business acumen, but no, he does. But when we first met, I was like, wow, this is so cool. This would be such an interesting combination of skills. And his negotiation, his ability to convince, his ability to read people really quickly, his ability to just read a room and address people's emotions in a way that I had never been taught, and de-escalate people when they were upset. It added such an element of sophistication to my business, and I knew it would, that it just made natural sense. And then when he started telling me about all these techniques that he used in the bureau and some of the cases, which are just insane, they're so cool, I just was like, I know everybody else in business can learn so much from this. So if we put our respective fields together, I just know it's such a unique combination, and it has been. It's really been exciting to build.
I mean, that's really powerful. As I hear you guys talking, you got the strategist and you got the visionary, and they come together. That forms a very powerful, powerful thing. And I laugh when you said Adele wanted to do 3 months. Hey, we're going, because I was like, man, that is so me. I'm like, why wait? Let's go, right?
Yeah, you get it as an entrepreneur, right, Cory? I mean, you've sold 2 businesses, you've written at least 2 books that I know about. So you're of that mind. But yeah, man, it's exciting.
Unfortunately, our timing, like we did this 2 masterclass. We're like, wow, these in-person events, they're killing, they're slaying. And then it was like COVID. And we're like, oh
Pandemic.
man. And I like the way you said pandemics just right there. But what we decided to do in that time, again, like just not trying to waste that time. We
Yeah.
wrote
Yeah.
a book. We
Adele
wrote a
goes,
book and published
okay,
it,
you know what? Why don't we use this time and we're gonna just bang out a book here? I said, well, okay, yeah, I'm a believer now. I know she's like she's down for it. Let's go.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm kind of curious about, so you guys came together and you got the master class and it sold out. Like, what do you think it was? What do you guys do? But what was it that drew all the people there? Like, obviously there's something that you guys are doing that's attracting people. Like, there's something that you teach that people want to know. And like, what is that? Like, what do you guys do in the master classes?
Well, here's another part of it. As we were like going down and figuring out, okay, this is what our offer is going to be all about. And we were trying to figure out, what do we call this? What are we going to call this masterclass? What title are we going to give it? And again, this is Adele, and you're going to identify with this, Cory. We're kicking around ideas and thoughts on it. And Adele goes, it's going to be called Convince Me. I'm like, yeah, that's it. Absolutely. Mic drop. We're good. And doggone it, if that wasn't, exactly captured it, because really that's what we do every day of our lives. People often say, and we also, that book we told you about, that's the title of the book too, Convince Me. And it's so much more, I guess, an everyday thing than a negotiation is. Negotiations, are very quick. They can, go 1, 2, 3 and out. But convincing people, really, that's what it is. And that's what I did in the bureau, right? As a hostage negotiator. It's kind of a misnomer of the name. I never negotiated with anyone. My job was to get that guy who's got a gun on somebody's head to value what I valued, and to value life, and to value the lives of those people with him. And then to value, hey, it's a better idea that you come out and surrender to me than the consequences that you could face. And that's what it was, right? I was never going to say this guy, look, you got 7 in there, tell you what, kill 3, give me back 4, we'll call it a day. It wasn't an option, right? And that's how we've been proceeding with our business, is that this is all about convincing, and it's about doing the right thing and being such a believer in what you do, having the conviction of it, and then going full steam ahead and helping people understand other people's emotions, their communication style, what they really believe. So yeah, man.
I love that. I love what you said, right? Like, in that scenario, that is no option. Yeah, take 3,
Yep.
and all that. It's like, and I love how you said convincing them the value of life, that people are of value, and you're valuable too, but there's people of value. I would love to hear your thoughts on, maybe most of the people who are listening, they're either leaders, entrepreneurs, or family people. And for the leader who may be listening, like, how do I, like, what are some practical tools that I can convince or get my people to buy into the vision or direction that we're going? Or maybe even, a parent that's like, I see my child go in this direction, I want to convince them of the proper way. What are some tools there for those scenarios?
Chip, do you want me
Go
to?
ahead, Dale.
Oh, sure. So one of the things that I thought was very fascinating was Chip's ability to listen to other people and dial into them in such a way that it really felt like the whole room was empty and that he was just focused on you. Like, this is what he does in a networking event. We literally walk up to somebody and he's like dialed into that person. And by the end, he like knows their whole story. He knows their kids' names. He knows where they went to college.
Adele does this too,
I mean,
by the way. It's not just me.
But he can do that, right? And he can do it super easily. And so, how do you do that? How do you, just really impact someone immediately upon meeting them? And one of the ways he did this was he listened in a way that I had never heard before. And it's not active listening so much. Active listening is really great for de-escalating a person, right? And making that person go from a 10 to a 5 to a 1. And I'm using some of Chip's language when I say this, right? But that's all about de-escalation, right? And that's what you do. That's what he did as a hostage negotiator. And we said, what's the application of that in a business setting? And what we call it is forensic listening. And forensic listening is like a 4-dimensional way of listening to someone. It's about listening to their emotions. It's about listening to their voice, pitch, tone, cadence of their voice. It's about listening to the themes and stories they continue to repeat. And it's about looking at body positioning, not body language, but body positioning. And we kind of differentiate between the two. The reason why we have this 4-dimensional approach to listening is because we believe in business, you don't have just one conversation and make the person feel better and walk away and never talk to them again. Likelihood is you're going to talk to them 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 times, however many times you really interact with them. So if you can take notes in a way where this person feels truly listened to, and then you can refer back to those notes weeks and weeks later and say, you know what? I heard what you said about corporate social responsibility. And I know that you got really excited when you talked about corporate social responsibility. And I know that you leaned into it when you were talking about the stats and why we should do that at our company. And you know what? I think that's a really good thing. And what I think, Cory, is we all have a story of a person who did that to us in a meeting. And we can count them on one hand, right? And we refer back and we'll tell other people about how we were listened to and how this person implemented what we said, because it is so rare to feel listened to in that way. And this is really like taking Chip's active listening, taking business context and the things that are important that people really want you to hear, and getting to it and then implementing that in a business context. It is incredibly powerful. I'll let Chip talk about it a little bit. I'm sorry, Chip.
No. That's great. And I know, just in the brief moments we got to know you, Cory, we know also you're like that kind of engaging person. You have that energy. You've got that drive, that interest in people. And, before I was an FBI agent, I was a minister for 6 years. Wow. And that's really where because I just flat out love people. So does Adele. We just love people. And that was one of the, honors of my life, is getting to be able to help somebody every day in that capacity, as somebody they turn to in a crisis event. I mean, it's so humbling to know somebody at that level and for them to trust you at that level. And really, that's what forensic listening is about, because what we say is words leave clues. And like Adele said, no conversation today is just one and done, right? We are always communicating with each other, with people in multiple sets, in situations. Just because we're at a specific job or project, and then we move on to another, there's a good chance we're going to see that same person at some point down the line. So wouldn't it be awesome if you could have an understanding of that person to the degree like Adele just said, right? Like being able to recount a story they told or something that made an impact on you. And one of the things we talk about, Cory, is the unstated narrative. And that's where there is a disconnect between what somebody actually believes about you, your business, what you stand for, your kind of the service that you give, and what they'll tell you to your face, right? There's a disconnect. And there's a good reason for that, because if we told everybody what we actually believed about them, there'd be blood in the streets. So we got to pull back some, right? We got to cover some things up. But now imagine this. Imagine if you had the techniques and the tactics and the understanding and the patience to so dial into that person that you get pretty darn close to what that hidden, unstated narrative is. Can you imagine the relationship that you could forge as a result of that basis, and that you would be seen as a trusted person in their life, that they'd go to again and again, regardless of what it was, whether it was to give advice or to help out their company or whatever it is. So those two things are really the cornerstone of what we do.
Yeah, I love that. And kind of even going back, you answered the question of leading the people, and even as a family, is it's got to be something at the heart level right there, where you position yourself as that person that can be trusted. I want to ask you something that Adele had mentioned, the difference between body posture and body language. And that's really interesting, because about 30 minutes ago, I was on a call and we were talking about body language and those kind of things. I would love just to, this is for me, I would love the differentiator between kind of the difference between or position. You said position, I'm sorry.
Position.
Position and body language. What do you mean by that?
Chip, do you want to?
Okay, well, Adele, I was just thinking a perfect segue with that would be that story that you tell of the woman in the meeting.
Yeah. So, we do a lot of crisis communication work, and that means you get pulled into really high stress, high problem business situations, right? And it's like somebody did something wrong. They may have said something wrong. They might be misconstrued or misperceived by the market, by their customers. There's something that went wrong that you call us in, and then we help you fix it. And so I went into this meeting, and this woman had, I kept asking her questions about the crisis. It's one of the things we have to do, right? We have to like sort of peel the onion back, because whatever people say the crisis is, it's usually not that. It's usually like, maybe 5 levels deep of like what they're not telling you, kind of like that unstated narrative, right? So it really is your job to like slowly and as comfortably as possible get them to tell you the whole truth, because if they spin us, they're really in trouble, right? Because then we're that's really the worst thing you can do. So I'm asking her questions, and every single time I landed on this one question, she kept turning her back to me more and more and more. And I'm just like, I don't know what is going on. And so I go from the meeting and I call Chip up. This is when we were like first starting work together. And I'm like, Chip, the weirdest thing happened to me. I was like, every time I asked this woman a question about the crisis in this area, she kept moving her back. What's going on? What is that? And he talked about Chip.
Yeah. So that's where we're getting to the idea of being uncomfortable with the story, because it's now getting into deception. She's blading, right? That's something that we came up with in terms of body positioning, because we're people of movement. We're not just static, sitting down, hunkered there in one set, but we are constantly dynamically in motion. And if you pay attention to the motion that is giving off toward the themes and what they're talking about and their expression and their energy level, you're going to get a sense of what's going on. And like Adele said, Adele picked it up. It was in her spidey sense. She knew something was off. No, that's what it is. It is that person was telling her, I'm not comfortable talking about this. And so she was disengaging. She was actively doing in her mind, using her body as a sign of that. It's like I am trying to move from this topic. Like that was what happened. So, right. That's the idea of body positioning. So it could be like, you're talking to somebody and their face might match how their body is moving. Like you've seen people in tense situations, like you might see them rock, right? Balls to heel kind of thing. That's a bad sign. That's somebody that either they're very excited about something, it's like a happy occurrence, or they're getting ready to do something to you or to the environment around them, right? So that my job before this was to always look for signs of danger, right? I was looking for times when somebody could go violent. So if you turn that on a business kind of situation, you're going to be able to see when somebody's not interested in what you've got to say. You know, maybe your proposition's all wrong, and you're seeing all the signs of them. Maybe they're looking beyond you. They got their head a little bit on swivel. They're taking more calls. They're looking at their phone a little bit more. So all these things, if you put them together and understand the context of how we work the process and the system, it really will help you.
And Cory, just real quickly, just to add what Chip's saying too, right? With the body positioning, the difference between body language and body positioning is, and Chip taught me this, and it's really true, right? Like when you're trying to spot a liar or you're trying to spot someone who's being deceptive, if you use body language, like what everybody says is like their arms are crossed or they're looking up into the, to the right or to the left or whatever, it's like all of these things could be like that person just likes to do that. They're more comfortable like this, right? It's like you have to look at the what do you say, Chip? It's the
the totality of the circumstance. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's not just, one thing and then, oh, that person's a liar. They're clearly like that. It's like, no, you have to observe the whole thing.
Yeah.
I love that. That's really helpful too. And because I get the opportunity to work with teams and those kind of things. And I literally was talking a little bit about body language. And that's one of the things, I've been taught is, the arms crossed. That means it may be a little bit close. But like you just said, honestly, that's a comfortable position for me.
Yep.
So,
that's what you run into, right?
Yeah.
Always.
So I love what you say. That's the totality of the whole kind of the sequence of events that you're seeing right there with their body language. That's good.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. I would love to, you guys, your thoughts on the scenario right there. You talked about that she kept like, man, what is up with that? She kind of keeps turning her back or whatever. Maybe I'm a leader and I kind of see something like that. Maybe one of my people on my team starts kind of doing that same thing. How would I address that? Like what maybe something subtle or right to it? Is it something you do directly? Like how do you address that with maybe somebody that you're responsible for on your team?
Chip, do you want to take it?
Well, I just think, and you want to pull that person aside. This is somebody who obviously is uncomfortable with something going on internally with him. Okay, in this case, it was she didn't want to tell you the whole full boat of what happened, right? There was something that the company wanted to keep as a silence, on and keep a lid on it and circle the wagons around. All right, fine. Let's talk to the CEO separate. Let's pull them out. Or whoever's on your team is displaying like some kind of behavior or posturing that signifies to like a negative feeling, like a closed off positioning, or again, I need to move out from whatever this is. All right. So you pull that person aside and say, hey, listen, Ted, I just noticed you just seemed a little bit more disengaged than usual. Now, look, it could be what we were talking about. It could be something you're going through, whatever. I just want you to know, I really want to know and understand better about what you might be feeling or experiencing. It might be something I said, might be something happening at home. I don't know. But man, can you help me out understanding? Because I really want to get there. You see, you give people an opportunity to tell you what they're feeling. And if you can do it without judgment, like that's why we always say, use empathy. If you can do that without waiting to like it's likely going to go to a confrontation, right? They might be upset at you. And so you're like, okay, here we go. And one of the mistakes that we make as humans is that we always want to justify why we're right.
Yeah.
And I'll let Adele in a little bit talk about the convincing continuum. But, we're always looking for to like lash out when we feel like we're threatened. Instead, we should be listening to respond in that moment. It is like, I'm going to hear what you have to say. I want to hear everything. I'm not just listening to put in a zinger. I'm not just listening. So when you take a breath, I'm going to attack you. I'm just going to lay in the cut and then I'm at you. So what you want to do is after somebody has said something to you that showed a little bit of vulnerability, or maybe took a attack against you, you want to use that moment and say, listen, thank you. First of all, that took some courage, to tell me. And there might be some things I really got to reflect on. I'm certainly going to take everything you just said and examine it in my own life. But I just wanted to thank you. And just let you know that I'm going to work on whatever that is, and if there's something I can do, that's the kind of dynamic. So absolutely, you don't want to address that person in the group. You do want to address it though, but pull them aside, in a way that is, again, not confrontational, just kind of like, let's talk.
I love that.
Adele, go to the convincing continuum. Tell them about how that works out.
Oh, poor Cory. Hopefully we're not like drowning you in content.
I love it. I'm all in. Like, I like it.
It's great. It's fun, right? It really is fun. I mean, I would just say too, Chip, what Chip was talking about too is about mitigation, right? You got to give people mitigation. I think in many cases, like that particular, woman with the bleeding, it's like she didn't want to give the information out in front of anyone else. It needed to be a private conversation. She didn't know how to say it in a way that, so she was doing it with her body. As leaders, we have to be aware enough to pick up on these like subtle clues that people are giving us, and they are giving us clues all the time when these things are going on. So just to talk about the convincing continuum, and I see, what's the poster behind you, Cory? What does that say? What is that poster?
It says, how is the sky the limit when there are footprints on the moon? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's great, right?
A perfect segue into my convincing continuum. Are you ready for this? Okay.
Hey, Adele, I got a friend that says you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. So I'm ready.
All right. I love that. I love it. Super fun. That's great. Okay. So I'm going to say a couple of things, and I'm going to take you down the convincing continuum, but I'm going to use an example of Neil Armstrong and landing on the moon. So you're ready for it? I know you are.
He's ready.
Okay.
I'm ready. Okay.
All right,
So
let's go.
Am I in the hot seat? I don't know if I want to be in the hot seat.
Maybe you're in the hot seat just a little bit, but not too bad. It's not too bad. I promise. We'll come back around. Okay. So if I said to you, Cory, I believe that we never put a man on the moon, what is your like initial reaction? Are you like, she's a wackadoo, she's a conspiracy theorist? Like, you have all these things in your head about me already, right? Like when I say that.
I do, which is kind of, I'm sorry, I know we're trying to get to a point here, but I had this conversation with my daughter yesterday. And so anyway.
Okay, well, maybe she can learn some.
Yeah.
Okay. So I believe we never put a man on the moon. I mean, there's lots of things that, that might make you question whether or not we put a man on the moon. Like, for instance, if you're in a desert or in a dark forest at night and you look up, what do you see?
See a bunch of stars.
You see a bunch of stars, right? Yeah. But when Neil Armstrong landed on the moon and he planted a flag, there were no stars in the distance. It was pure black in the background, okay? And let me ask you something else. Has there ever been any other country that has claimed to put a man on the moon other than the U.S.?
Well, I thought I heard something the other day, but no.
Okay, right? Yeah. Well, I think I heard something like Russia put a man, orbited around the moon, but nobody else but the U.S. put a man on the moon. And isn't it curious that we were in a technology space race at that point, right? We wanted to show dominance over Russia at the time. And so what a better way than to, fake a moon landing? I mean, it's possible, right? And it's possible. Let me ask you another question. Has the American government ever lied to its people?
Now, wait a minute.
No.
Wait a minute.
No way.
Okay.
You've gone too far, Adele. You've gone too far.
I pushed it too far. The whole point and why I'm saying all these things is I believe we put a man on the moon too. I agree. Neil put that flag on there. Okay. But what I'm trying to do is take you down what we call the convincing continuum. And I'm going to leave you with this last thought. If you go and Google a picture of Neil Armstrong on the moon and you look at the backdrop, there is nothing but blackness. I mean, you can't see a star at all. You just can't. Why is that? What is your explanation for that? I mean, there really isn't any. So now I've given you a task. I've given you what we call the convincing cliffhanger so that you can go find information on the thing that I've left you with. But what I did is I moved you down a continuum. And I didn't start with my point of agreement. I started with my big point, my saga of my righteousness. I like went right in for the kill, right? I'm like, this is my belief. Don't you believe that too? And that's how most of us start, right? Most of us start with our strongest point first. And what happens? It is never what we want, which is, it is never what we want, which is like what Chip, the person to just throw their hands up and be like, you're 100% right. I'm wrong. I never saw it that way. That never happens, right? Like never. It's in our dreams that happens, but it never happens normally. So what we had to do is instead of starting with our strongest point, we had to start at the point of agreement, right? And then move people down. And then what we want to do is we want to unfreeze their cognitive biases. And we want to do this by doing something we call FUD, replacing fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and saying like, maybe what you think you know about this isn't what you think you know. And maybe there's some doubt in your approach and way of thinking, so that they can start to unfreeze their belief. And then you leave them with something. You leave them with that cliffhanger. It's why Netflix is so effective at getting us to watch like 6 episodes of something when we only plan to watch 1, because they leave us with a cliffhanger at the end of that episode. And then we're just dying to know what's happening next, because we have an open loop, right? And as smart, intellectual people, we need to close that loop. And so we're going to go and try to seek out information. So with the convincing continuum, what you want someone to do is go seek out that information and convince themselves that what you've presented to them is different than what they believed before. Because if you go in for the kill, if you go in for that, first point is your best point, you got nowhere else to go. It's just really interesting stuff.
All I know is you just gave my 9-year-old some ammo. That's what she's not going to listen to. No, I'm playing. It's funny.
I love it.
She was just trying to have she was trying to stir up some thoughts. But it's funny. We were talking about this yesterday. So
Really
that's funny.
That's great. Hey, I would love to hear. I'm assuming that's probably a chapter or in the book and in one of your courses as well. And so, yeah, I'd love for you to tell a little bit more about the book. Convince me. Here's my question to you, right? So I've written a couple books, got my 3rd one in editing, and there's some chapters that you just really like. You know what I'm saying? Like I like this chapter, and all of them's good because you wrote it, I guess. And but like, is there a specific chapter? I'd love to hear from each of you. Like I really like this chapter, or this thought that we talk about. And so, what about you, Chip? Is there one that you really like?
Yeah, man. I think that whole forensic listening, note taking is such a game changer for people. And whenever we've presented it in trainings, like we did a thing for it, an international bank, and in talking about interviewing and so forth. And we talked about how to read a person in the whole picture of them in the most robust way. And we use this as a like we call it the 4 Ds of note taking. So if you need to take notes for next actions, for what you got to follow up on, what you got to do, but you should also be taking notes in this way. We recommend that people on their notepad that they divide up in like 4 quadrants, right? And so in the one, you've got theme development. What is it that the person is saying to you? How are they saying it? What is the theme there? The other is going to be all about the emotion. When they're saying these things, and it could be that you see them go high in when they're talking about their employees' engagement, but they go very low when they talk about the sales numbers. Okay, so they're really interested in engagement, right? And then it's going to be, your lower right is, like Adele said, is your voice, your pitch, tone, and cadence. Do they go up, down? Are they slow or fast? And the other final one is going to be the body positioning. How are they related in relation to you, to the group, and so forth? What are the dynamics at play? Now you combine all that together, And it's become such a powerful way to understand somebody in a deeper way, to read what is actually going on. And what this company did, this bank, they said, they said, look, we're going to do this nationwide. We're going to implement this whole thing. And it just is a game changer for people, because it really solidifies in the mind how to start looking at people in a different way, and to get to know them in a much more complex kind of way, and a vibrant color kind of way.
Yeah. I love that. That's good. That's good. And Adele, what about you? Any kind of specific thought or chapter you guys discussed that you just really like?
Yeah, I really like our chapter on the two different types of convincers. You're either you either are an emotional convincer or you're a fact-based convincer. And it's not that you're one or the other, you just have a preference for how someone is going to convince you, right? So you either love story-based, emotional, this is why I want this thing, or you want fact-based, what you want to give the data, you want to show why, you want evidence or proof. And so the best example I have is my friend wanting she really wanted a Mercedes, and she wanted a Mercedes convertible, and she had reached a certain level of money in her business, and she just felt she was ready to get that Mercedes convertible. But she had an engineer husband, and he was just not about spending money on the Mercedes convertible. And she was just she eventually tried to convince him using all emotional things, I look really good in it. I deserve it. It's the brand that I really love. Come on, it's a Mercedes. Let's just do it. We have the money. Why not? And she comes to me and she's just he won't buy the car. He won't even listen to me. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And I was because you're talking to a fact-based dude, and you're going all emotional about why. And I was let's look up some stats about this car. And so we did. And this is my journalism training, right? It's figure this out. What does the audience want to hear? And so what we realized was the Mercedes has, you should get them to sponsor your show. Mercedes has the best safety record for a luxury vehicle. It's got the best resale value for a luxury vehicle. We went down all the things that would check the boxes. And then it was okay, fine, let's just buy the car. Because she convinced him in the way that he wanted to be convinced. Often we approach others with our technique how we want to be approached, and that often backfires. So when you're trying to figure out how to convince someone of something, are they more emotional, are they more fact-based? And even when you're thinking about how to convince a group, if you're talking to a bunch of physical therapists, I would say they're more emotional people, right? They're all about connectivity. They're all about relationships, right? They're want to heal people, right? Exactly, right? So they're more emotional, but there are some physical therapists that are super fact-based. You've got to figure out, who are you talking to? What do they want to hear? What do they most lean towards? And your argument or your position should focus on what they want to hear. So I really love that chapter. I think that's fun.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love that as well. And I just serving people where they're at and how they like to be served. And I would love to hear your thoughts on this. There seems to be this fine line between motivating and manipulating. Right. And so how do you guys, that rub right there where some people may be well, you're just manipulating people. And I don't see it like that, but I would love for you to talk into that a little bit, that fine line between motivating and manipulating people with some of the tools and principles.
All right. So what we say with that, Cory, is that, look, you can use a hammer to build a house or to knock it down.
Yeah.
Right. The tool is the tool. It's the person that is wielding it that is the determinant in that. And so what we're talking about is, look, we're going to help you understand people better. We're going to help you get your point across in a way perhaps that you haven't been able to. It's one of the things we say is that, we use probably the same convincing strategies that we've used since we were 5. right? We probably have one or two go-tos. And if we're talking to somebody, we're putting them in play. And if that person doesn't bite, doesn't want to sign the contract, you know, your kid still doesn't want to eat the vegetables, then we say, well, that person's a jerk. And you know, I'm just gonna go.
They're
But
just strong-willed.
yeah. Obviously not the kid. But if you had just like one or two more strategies, tactics that you've never used before, and you tried them out and it worked, imagine, you know, that's really what it comes down to, is that people are out there and they're wanting to be understood.
Mm-hmm.
People are desperate to tell their story. Why not use a very methodical, a very kind
systematic
of process
yeah,
that says, here's how I'm going to try to understand you better, because I want to improve this relationship. Man, I got something I know is great, and I want you to be a part of that. I want you to buy into it. Why not? If you believe in what you do and you think you're the best at it, why would you not want that person to be on that, to be on your team, and to be 100% into it? Well, that's how you get there. You get there by understanding them better than perhaps anybody else. That's
maybe they even understand themselves, right? Like,
yeah.
I think that's part of it. It's like one of the things we talk about in the book, which I love this term too, because it's so powerful if done right. Again, not manipulative, but right, is we call it targeted validation. And the reason why we call it targeted validation is because what you've done over the course of forensic note taking and various other things in that respect is you've figured out what their unstated narrative is. You know how they want to be perceived by others, how they want the world to perceive them. And if you can say that back to them and be super targeted and validate them on the thing that they're most passionate about, there's no way that person's not going to be more influenced by you because you've noticed something about them. Even if you don't like that person, you're more likely to listen to them because they validated your perspective. And so many of us don't get that. We either don't get it at home, we don't get it, at work, and we're seeking it. We want someone to validate us, especially about something we're passionate about. So many of us miss it because we're looking to make our next point. We're looking for others to validate us. We're not looking to validate other people. And just if you can just turn that around, it just can be so incredibly powerful. We had one of our clients, he was having trouble with his team, and and he just couldn't get his team to do what he wanted. And we said, you know what, we've seen you interact with your team, and maybe you could validate people a little bit here and there. Maybe you can, tell them what they're doing right. He goes back around in this one conference we were at, and he heard our conversation and heard our presentation. He starts validating his team. And he comes back to us the next day, and he's like, so my team thought I was high or crazy or something because I came back and I was so positive. They didn't know what was wrong with me, but they loved it. They had such a positive reaction to it. But it was really, really funny, right, Chip? That was hilarious.
It was. Yeah.
Yeah, it works.
Well, what I love about what you said, and I totally agree with you. The people that are kind of listening to this call, the people who typically tune into what we do, these are the kind of people that need to know these kind of principles. There are people that know this stuff that probably don't need it in their hands. You talk about the hammer, right? Like, you can use it for good, you can use it for evil. And the same thing with these principles and the techniques that you guys are talking about. It needs to be in the hands of people who are going to do some good stuff with it. And
Yes, sir.
It reminded me, we usually get into a lot of faith conversations in the podcast, but it reminded me of a verse of scripture. Exactly. It talks about, it says, the children of this world are more shrewd in their dealing with the world around them than the children of light. And it's this false humility thing doesn't allow me to want to learn these kind of things, when in reality, man, it's so good. It allows us to serve people better.
Yes, sir.
It's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah,
I know we're getting close on time, and I I really would love to keep on talking. Chip, I gotta ask you a question though. Okay, I got to ask you a question.
I love when people start it up like that. It's great.
Yeah, you know where it's going. He's reading me already. He's like, what's he going? You said you started out as a minister, and then you go into FBI negotiation. Like, how in the world did that happen?
Yeah, man. Yeah. You know, like I said, it was the most profound privilege in my life, you know, to be that guy, you know, in people's lives as a minister. I had no idea what the impact that was going to make on me. I mean, the privilege of just dealing with people's their you know, their most bottom moments, and to be the guy that they leaned on to help them through that. I mean, and also the, you know, the celebrations, right? You know, so in a day you could go from, you know, the worst possible funeral ever, and you know, like that evening you're doing a wedding, you know, and that's just the nature of it, and that's what life is. But so for me, while I love being able to help people every day and get to know people at that level, I still wanted a little bit more excitement in my life, Cory, right? I had that in me, and I wrestled with it. I did, because, you know, I took a cut in calling. I absolutely did. But I still firmly believe that I am being used to help and improve people's lives. And that's why I was so excited when I met Adele, is that this is such a powerful thing for good, for helping people, that, you know, we know that these principles, you know, they just flat out work. And the more good people that get a hold of these things and implement it, man, they're going to get to know people at a whole different level. But anyway, that was my story on it. Yeah, I just wanted a little bit more excitement. I started talking to some people in the FBI, and they told me about it. They said best thing they ever did. So yeah, that's how we got there.
But Chip, it's like also
Awesome.
what you did in the ministry and what you do as a hostage negotiator. It's kind of right. I mean,
Oh
there's
yeah,
some
I mean,
similarities, right?
yeah, it was dealing with people in crisis, you know, and I was like, well, shoot, I've got some experience in that, and that's really why I gravitated toward hostage negotiation, Cory, was because of, you know, I'm already like set up like that, so why not put that into practice? So.
Chip, I have to have you tell Cory the story. Like, how did you wind up? Like, what was the first assignment they gave you as a hostage negotiator? Like, wasn't it like answering crazy people calls?
No,
this
is good, right? This is
Yeah, let's go.
this is good. So, you know, everybody, you know, as a special agent, you're trained in the very basics of like, you know, interviewing. You know, you actually go very much in depth in interviewing, but the very basics in like hostage negotiation, you're going to get that at Quantico, right? I mean, you're there for 5 months, daggone it, they got to teach you something. So, so you come out of that with these kind of principles, but you don't get the everyday kind of grind experience of that until you get into hostage negotiations. However, what I found out was, you know, when I was first assigned to the field office, everybody had to do a time in the, like, I'll call it like complaints desk, right? So you had to work some shifts in there, and you always got angry people calling, right? And they've got sometimes it's the most bizarre stories, but you got to take the call because they could have something there, could still be real. At any rate, you know, before I was a hostage negotiator, I'd go in there, I'd be slogging, I'd be like, all right. And then, you know, you get that angry caller and they're yelling. You're like, you're trying to like, listen, we're doing the best I can. You know, we got so many cases, you know, we will, but you got to tell me what the violation, you know, you're trying to help, but you don't really get there. And after I became a hostage negotiator, I was like, you know what? Let me just try this again. I already had some time on, so I didn't have to spend time in the complaint desk, but I wanted to do it anyway. So I went up there and I said, look, guys, I want you to give me your worst call. You know, if you've got a caller that, you know, is giving you the hardest time, maybe they're chronic or whatever, just send them to me. I want it. You're like, oh, deal, Massey, we're on. So I'm sitting there, the call comes in, and the guy goes, oh, it's Emmett. All right, go, Massey, this is you. So, it's Emmett, and he's got a story, and he's fired up, and he's upset. And I'm using these techniques, man. And I'm just like, let's hear it. And I go through it with him, and I'm listening, and I'm validating, and I'm trying to get to his story about, what happened and so forth. And he's de-escalating, right? And not only is he de-escalating, but he's starting to trust me more. I feel it, right? The conversation's changing. And after he gets off the phone, after we're getting ready to hang up, I said, listen, Emmett, I got to move on from this, but I appreciate you calling in. This guy could not have been more gratified and happy that he called that day, right? And it was because I knew how the heck to handle it, Emmett, right? And that's the thing, is that we can totally change people's courses and how they think and believe about us and our companies and who we are. We just listen in this way that we talk about.
Wow, that's powerful. Well, Chip and Adele, you guys have added a ton of value to me. I know you've added a ton of value to our listeners, and anybody who's listening, they want to find out, hey, I want to get your book, and I would love to know if you got another master class coming up. Like, how do they stay in touch with you guys? How do they get your resources? Those kind of things.
Sure. So we are going to be launching a website really, really soon called trainingsogood.com. And we're going to have a masterclass soon. I think April. I think we're shooting for April. We don't know quite where yet. We're getting the details, logistics. We'll put that on our website when it's available. But we're going to have some online courses, and you can get our book on Amazon. You can get it in Barnes and Noble. And so, yeah, we hope people go and get our book, and and then tell us how you've used the skills and techniques in the book in real practical ways. We just love to hear from people. So
that's great. Well, we'll have that in the show notes below, where to get the book and those kind of things. I know it'll help you, and I firmly believe that these tools need to be in the hands of people who are going to do good with it. Really do. And I appreciate you guys coming on. And so thank you guys for taking a listen. Make sure you follow Chip and Adele. Make sure you check out their book. And if they've said anything that has added value to you, comment below and we'll pass that along, or reach out to them directly. Make sure you like and subscribe so you can stay up to date with any of the latest episodes of the Cory Lee Show. We hope you guys have a great day, and God bless.